Scully on SiriusXM's POTUS, Channel 124.
He represents Florida's 8th Congressional District, which includes the Space Coast. His committees include, appropriately enough, Science, Space and Technology and Financial Services. Mike Haridopolos, Republican Congressman from Florida. Congressman, welcome back to the briefing. Thank you so much for being with us.
Great to be on again, Steve. Thanks for the opportunity.
So there is an extension when it comes to Section 702, which is part of the FISA law, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and a lot of pressure to get this across the finish line, but even some divisions within your own party on the debate. And again, the extended deadline is into next week. What is your view on this? What do you think is going to happen and when?
Well, I'm optimistic that we can not only get Republican votes to this, but hopefully Democrat votes as well. I mean, this is an important provision. As you know, we're in a conflict with Iran. Nations like North Korea, China, and others want to do us harm. And so we need to get as much information as possible, use these effectively. But what had happened in prior years, as you recall, Steve, going back to 2021, there were a lot of misuses of these opportunities. There were 278,000 improper inquiries under the old law. They were able to pass a more recent version, which made some changes so there are fewer of those improper inquiries. I mean, these are people who were, in essence, abusing the ability to look into different information. And so we're trying to find that middle ground. I think we need this to be revised in a small way, but in general, we need to get this done because we need to make sure that we have all the tools at our disposal to protect the homeland. And I'm cautiously optimistic that we'll be able to get at least a 6-month extension as we continue to negotiate the issue.
But why is this such a tough sell? You have people like your colleague Andy Biggs of Arizona, who's been a leading opponent of this program, saying it is unconstitutional, it is dangerous. How do you get those from a no to a yes?
I think it's a challenge. I mean, as you know, because there were so many abuses of the system, again, I can't stress it enough. Back in 2021, during the Biden years, 278,000 improper inquiries. Now, with the reforms made, there were 56 of them made recently, where there are only, quote, 127 of these improper inquiries, but it's still too many. That means that, in essence, American government were spying on some American citizens illegally, and folks like Andy Biggs, Congressman Biggs from Arizona has expressed his concern that it's simply still too much, and they want to put even more safeguards there, and we're trying to kind of thread the needle of national security. And this is why we're trying to get 702 done. And for your listeners, as you know, 702 is dealing with foreign issues. 701 is the American angle on it.
Does the president support a simple, clean extension of FISA? Is he adding more things that's complicating passage in Congress? What are you hearing from the White House?
We've heard consistently from the White House they would like to basically pass a clean FISA extension because they see that the number of abuses have gone down dramatically. Again, there's still some folks who feel that this is still going too far in trying to protect the homeland. But the president, working with the national security leaders, including the former Congressman Radcliffe, and of course his national security team, feels like we should extend it because of the threats that here are abroad. I think he's been very clear on that, and I support the president's position.
Congressman, are you worried that we're getting a lot of mixed information from the White House on another topic, which is the war in Iran? The president indicating that perhaps an agreement will be signed tonight, although the Vice President, J.D. Vance, he may go to Pakistan. That may happen midweek. But clearly something this complicated is not going to be worked out in just a couple of hours or even in a couple of days. I mean, it could take months or years to work out a long-term settlement with Iran if and when that happens. Are we getting mixed messages from President Trump?
Well, I think for the president's getting messages from whoever's in charge, he thinks. The problem has been, as you know, not just in this negotiation where we have absolutely destroyed the Iranian power to project in the region by sinking their navy and, of course, destroying their air force, etc. But the problem is Iran has always kind of played these games in negotiations. As you know, when President Obama was there, we thought we had worked out a deal with him after we lifted sanctions, and the government gave them a bunch of dollars. They simply broke those rules. And so you're dealing with the regime has constantly simply put lied or at least hesitated in these negotiations. And so it's a very tricky opposition. And so I think the president is trying his best to simply say, look, all we're asking for is some basic things. No longer produce weapons-grade uranium, nuclear proponents that could potentially make a nuclear bomb. And remember, Steve, they actually have the power to project a missile 2,500 miles. They lied about that as well. And so you're dealing with a tricky regime. I think the president is trying his best to navigate it. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to go back and use military means to force them to have an absolute surrender, much like we did with the Nazis and the Japanese during World War II.
Of course, you're feeling it in Florida, certainly across the country. Gas prices, interestingly enough, Congressman, that the $1 increase month to month is the largest increase ever since folks began keeping track of gas prices back in the late 1960s during the LBJ administration. So this is something that clearly is impacting Americans. Inflation is on the rise. The markets were up last week, but now down today because of the ongoing uncertainty about the war. My question in terms of the midterm elections, because as you know, historically, the party in power loses seats. There have been a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, Democrats have lost when they're in power. Republicans have lost when they are in power. Now concern about the Senate very much in play. How worried are you about losing control of the House in the midterm elections in this environment where the economy is turning sour and a majority of Americans, 63%, according to Quinnipiac, saying Donald Trump is responsible for inflation because of the war in Iran?
Well, look, I think you lay out a very challenging case there. I would just say this. One is, as you know, adjusted for inflation, a barrel of oil during the Biden years or Obama years hit as high as $147 to $150 a barrel. It's hovering around $100, I think, about right now. That said, we did our best to reduce gas prices. As you know, we're increasing production. We're also going to see Venezuelan oil come in line, which has been very much undercut through the years because of their poor policies and, of course, tragic leadership. That said, we believe, considering that the enemy of Iran has been around since 1979, they killed thousands of Americans. They're even so bloodthirsty, they killed over 30,000 of their own people. So that's a challenging situation, which the president is trying to handle, as we just discussed. As far as the midterms are concerned, this is a clear choice, in my opinion. Yes, the economy is not as good as it once was, literally about a month ago before this conflict. But in general, people's 401ks are up big time. We know that interest rates are still lower than they were during the Biden years. And as you're seeing Democrats that are in power in other states, whether it be Virginia, New York, Washington State, their solution to this affordability crisis has been to raise taxes. And I think when you have a challenging economy, the last thing you want to do is raise taxes. And so we're going to do our best to do the right thing. And we think prosecuting this war and destroying Iran's ability to project power, let alone nuke their neighbors, is important. And we're going to do everything we can to continue to drive down costs like we had been doing for the first 15 months of the administration. I mean, there's a reason why I think almost $17 trillion of foreign investment has come into the United States, because people around the world feel like America is still the best place to do business.
But as you know, if people are not feeling it, if they're paying more at the pump, if they're seeing higher prices at the grocery store, yes, you're right. The markets have been up. They've been down because of the war, but year to year they are up. But those are for people who have investments or portfolios. For the average American looking at the prices, you got to wonder how concerned you are as a Republican heading into the November elections, because those are things that every American feels every single day.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. I feel it, and you feel it, and we all feel these challenging issues at the grocery store. I mean, it's nowhere near the 9% inflation we had into the Biden years, but like voters should always say, what have you done for me lately? I think what we're trying to do is hopefully end this war as quickly as possible with the success, with the achieved goal. And I think we're getting closer to that. Once that's done, I think you'll see, again, gas prices come down and some of the other items that come with it. And remember, I do think elections are about choices. When we came into power, we said we reduced taxes on people who earned overtime and tips and Social Security. And we did that. And that's putting more money in people's pockets to make decisions. And of course, the second thing is when the Democrats had this power, they did not choose to do that. And so we are going to remind voters that life is about choices. We're far from perfect, but if you're wondering where to send the power, we believe that by giving tax relief to people, that they'll have better ways in which they can spend the money the way they see fit. Whereas the Democrat plan in the other states that they're leading right now has been, how do we tax people more? And I think the most obvious situation there is in Virginia when Spanberger ran as kind of a moderate on affordability issues, and yet she rose taxes. And of course, we've also seen this whole reapportionment mess kind of play out and removal of those folks trying to get rid of illegal aliens who actually committed violent crimes. So life's about choices. And again, we're not pretending that the economy is perfect, but we do think our policies long term are much better. And long term, having Iran is no longer a threat is obviously much better for our country as well.
Congressman, like so many Americans and really folks around the world, we marveled at the dazzling accomplishments of Artemis II and the mission around the moon and going to places that humans have not ever traveled before. You represent the Space Coast, and I want to share with you what Commander Reed Weissman said about life on board the mission and what they learned for Artemis II, how they will apply that for future missions.
Just speaking for myself, the thing that really surprised me on this mission was how well the spacecraft handled and how well the machine supported the 4 humans on board. We were a little cold the first 2 days. They warmed it up. They fixed everything that we asked. The thing that we need to probably work on for the next mission is now we know the things that we didn't know before we launched. Like, when you want to go into a bag and get lunch, but you got to dig through 1,000 different things to get to lunch, it makes it really hard and cumbersome to eat on a very busy day. There are different ways that we could manage the cabin during workout. Like, we have learned all these little nuances that we can make Artemis 3, 4, 5, just bring the gains down on those things so that they can focus, which we've always said on their task, rendezvousing with spacecraft in orbit, getting on the lunar surface, and building a sustainable presence on the moon. Like, we hold the key to that lock, and we've already started debriefing so that they don't have to worry about that lock.
Commander Weissman, with an assessment of Artemis II, and Congressman, I think you would agree that it was, by every account, by every measure, a picture-perfect mission from launch to splashdown.
We are so grateful for the amazing leadership shown by these 4 brave astronauts, and of course the team at NASA and all the different companies that make the SLS rocket, and of course Orion capsule that landed in the Pacific. It was, as you described it perfectly, Steve. It is an impeccably strong mission. Yes, there's some little things that we need to learn, as Mr. Weissman talked about. But this is exactly what we did with the Apollo program. We did a lot of testing before we made our attempt on the moon. And as I've said publicly, this was the linchpin. We need to make sure that Artemis II was a stunning success. It was. And we are very confident that we are moving forward so that in 2028, we'll be back on the moon with astronauts. It's established in what we would call a moon base. And as the chairman of this committee, we are working in a proudly bipartisan way to get things done. It's something where I've been proud to lead the latest legislation which Republicans and Democrats came together because they recognize how important it is for us to win this new space race and, of course, the satellite and military technologies that often come from it. So we could not be more excited, Steve, and it's so thrilling to actually talk with these astronauts who've literally gone further than any astronauts have gone before, and we're just so proud of this effort, and we want to continue that successful effort as we learn things every day on how to improve this Artemis mission to the success that we're intending in 2028.
To the moon and then ultimately to Mars. So it is dazzling is the only word I can use to describe what we're seeing, and marvel at what NASA and a public-private partnership able to do. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Welcome back to Washington. It's going to be a fun week. I say tongue-in-cheek.
Interesting week. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks so much.
Have a great week. Bye now.
By the way, the other story from Artemis II, what happened to the toilet?